What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Stranglers and Anglers MMA podcast. We're here for our first episode of the year. I'm here with my man, James K. We're going to be breaking down UFC 297, Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. James, welcome to the new year of UFC, my friend. We've got a banger of a main event to kick things off for us.
Yeah, dude. Banger of a main event. Rest of the card is there's some really down fights where you wish they were more exciting with where they're at on the card, but there's also some good ones and some like fights that are interesting matchup wise. So, but
Yeah.
obviously everyone this is a Canadian show. I realized when I was looking at the fighters, I'm like, oh, there's like 9 fighters from Canada on this card or something crazy. It's or 7 or something like that. So that's why it's not like a big name, and plus they have to save up for 299 and 300.
Yeah.
I
Sure.
just can't imagine how dry the rest of the year is going to be after those 2 cards, because that's like every fighter that you like to watch is on those 2 cards.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a lot of card pay-per-views like this, you feel like, right?
Yeah.
Where there's like maybe a really strong main event or something, and then, some lesser no names, lesser star power on some of these names. But if you're Canadian, you got to be so stoked on this event. Like this is one of the
Mm-hmm.
most Canadian events ever. So,
Mm-hmm.
James, with that being said, man, let's dive right into it here. In the main event, we've got Sean Strickland making his first 185-pound title defense, taking on the challenger, Dricus du Plessis. Sean Strickland, 28-5, du Plessis, 20-2. Kick us off here, man. How do you see this one going? You got any strong leans here? I'll preface it by saying that right now the line looks like Dricus du Plessis is minus 105, Strickland is minus 115.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's about an even. I mean, that's what I would expect the odds to be around. Dude, watching Duplessis film because he's like the first guy fighting in a main like a title fight where I had to go back and watch some film on him because I really only have watched Brunson, which was like the dumbest fight ever, and then the Robert Whitaker fight, which was amazing on Duplessis' part. Um, but that's all I've really seen of him, dude. That guy, he moves awkwardly, and it looks like his footwork doesn't keep up with his upper body. Like he's just looks unathletic when he moves, but there is a force behind everything he does, and he could possibly be the strongest middleweight in the world right now. Like he like when he flipped Robert Whitaker over, that was not by accident. And when now after rewatching the Darren Till fight with Duplessis, it's like, oh, like he literally was ragdolling Darren Till. Like that wasn't like Darren Till had a bad camp or he hurt his knee in the fight, which he did, but like all these things popped up, and I was like, there's no way Duplessis is that good. I actually think that he did ragdoll Darren Till. Now, Sean Strickland, amazing gas tank, amazing defense while putting the pressure on you and making you move around. We'll see how that goes because I'm still not a buyer on Duplessis' gas tank.
Mm.
I think that's where a lot of that strength and power comes from. But ultimately, when I look at this and I look at like, say, the technical aspect of this fight, who's got the edge where, I'm like, I can't see shit, so I just go right to like intuition, I guess you could say.
Sure.
And something is happening with Sean Strickland right now, especially with the politics of the world and like him really putting himself out there and like saying shit. Like if you heard the press conference today when he was like saying, I'm here for you, can like whatever he was saying,
Yeah, yeah,
dude, they were going nuts. Like they're
yeah.
feeling the same shit that like Americans are kind of feeling. It's the working class has been so like shit on over the last 15 years or so, and really shit on the last 5 years. And no better man relates to that than Sean Strickland. And he will not take himself out of that pocket where it's like Conor McGregor, in Chael Sonnen's words, and Conor McGregor's my favorite fighter, and I love him, and he's like an inspiration to me in many ways and got me out of dark times. But now Chael Sonnen saying he's a rich little weirdo has some truth behind it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Now he can come back and he's trying to find God, he's trying to do all this shit, but he bought into that lifestyle. Sean Strickland refuses.
Mhm.
So there's something going on with Sean Strickland where if the universe says that we need more of him, he will win this fight. But if we've had enough of Sean Strickland, like, because I don't know if this is going to go off the rails, like, because if he's champion again because of the rise that he's creating, like more interviews, more notoriety, more people interested after this fight, because there's going to be a bunch of people who've never watched UFC and don't know who Sean Strickland is, and then they're going to go down the rabbit hole themselves. So, like, if that all happens, I don't know what literally I don't know what the universe has planned for Sean Strickland, but I want him to win. And I think that like what he's doing right now, like as a fighter, is like exactly what we need in the world.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna literally put this in the hands of God, the universe, whatever, the Buddha, whoever you believe in, whatever, to say whether we've had enough Sean Strickland and it's going to go off the rails if he continues to win, or if there's more to come and he's really going to start like representing and growing a huge, even a bigger fan base.
Yeah, I think I'll touch on some of the fight aspects
Yeah,
too, but I just want to like what you're saying right now. I love because it's like we got the UFC gods. For me and you are like, all right, the UFC gods want Sean Strickland to win potentially.
yeah,
It's just a dude who speaks his mind, even if you don't agree with him. It's at least he feels genuine.
yeah.
On the other hand, we have the UFC Satan, Dana White, right? And like what I think a lot about this is like, does the UFC really want Strickland to win here? Like, do they want him to continue to be their champion with all the shit he says and the chaos that he could cause them? Do they, do they think that maybe he's sort of reached his peak in popularity and there isn't a whole lot of room left for him to grow? Like that wave has come and he's kind of on it right now, but it's starting to crash a bit. Whereas Duplessis is, feels like he's could be on a meteoric rise. And I don't know. I feel like they potentially think that like Duplessis versus Adesanya could do really big business down the line, whether it's UFC 300 or a UFC Africa card or something. I don't know how keen they are to make that rematch of Sean Strickland versus Izzy. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where maybe I'm looking into the narrative a little bit too much, but to me, it feels like the UFC kind of wants Dricus Duplessis to win this fight. Um, with that said, I put a half unit bet on him at like a week or like 2 weeks ago, maybe, at plus 116, just because I kind of saw how this line was moving and I figured he would end up being not at plus money. And, I thought there's even a chance that maybe Strickland would wind up at plus money. So if that happens, I'll just take an easy hedge out. If not, I'll just roll with the Duplessis thing. Here's what I'll say about it. We know how good Strickland is over 5 rounds. We know all about his defensive grappling. We know his cardio, his jab, his boxing. Um, the fights that he's lost, it's kind of like he loses to these guys that are like physical specimens,
Hmm.
whether it's Jared Cannonier or Alex Pereira or Kamaru Usman or Zaleski Dos Santos. You know what I mean? When he was fighting at 170, like Usman and Dos Santos are kind of like the physically important
Hmm.
enforcing like Cannonier Pereira type, like a different level of power, right? And I feel like Dricus is going to be so aggressive and so tough to deal with in those first couple rounds, and it's like the exact opposite fighting style of Izzy, right? Like Dricus isn't going to want to be on his back foot. He's going to pressure forward. He's going to actually exchange with you. And Dricus is just so big, dude, and has like such a
Hmm.
proven like chin and such proven power. It's just, it's a little tough for me at the plus money. I felt like I needed to take a little shot there just because mixing in with the narrative as well as like Strickland's tendency to sort of, when guys are just that much more physical than him, physical specimens, those are the fights he seems to lose, man.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm rooting for Strickland, dude. I really am. I really like watching him fight, and I think that over the course of like 5 rounds, right? If he survives those first 1 or 2 rounds, I think that it starts to really swing in his favor. You mentioned
Right.
Duplessis' gas tank; it's absolutely been questionable, right? And I'll say this: he apparently he had that same surgery of as Justin Gaethje, that deviated septum, and he just had that before the Whitaker fight. So maybe like unclogged sinuses. Duplessis is a new mythical fighter, and
Yeah.
he does just have crazy gas tank, but really it hasn't been super proven. And that Whitaker fight was a bit of an anomaly in the sense of like him not slowing down or him not even he has this thing where he in fights he looks like he's on death's door like
Mhm.
cardio wise, but he still is throwing output and
Mhm.
surviving, and he didn't ever get to that point against Whitaker. Obviously it didn't last super long. Still, we've seen him look more tired sooner in fights than we did in that Whitaker fight. So it's just one of those things where I think he's a hard dude to bet against right now. And maybe, Strickland comes out looking like a hindsight big favorite if he could extend that fight 5 rounds. Um, I just think that Duplessis is a little bit more like yeah, I just think it's his time, man. I really do. And I hope the universe is not in alignment with what I'm saying right now and that it's in alignment with what you're saying because I
Yeah.
think Strickland is more entertaining as a champion and I just, I think we both enjoy him as a character.
Yeah, 100%. And talking about that kind of made me think, I guess, of a technical aspect on this fight where it's like with Strickland, I'm always interested when you have a guy like Duplessis who's like a Terminator style fighter, right? Just comes
Yeah.
at you like he is how he looks. He just looks like a machine, like an Adonis. And it is interesting where if it does get to that even second round, it could start
Mhm.
happening where Strickland puts that pressure, not even necessarily throwing punches, but how fighters like that, if they can't put Strickland out, like if they can't put him out, how they look on the back foot. Cause there are dudes who win championship belts and defend the belt and are amazing. They cannot fight on the back foot. Like
Sure.
an example of that would be like um, Chuck Liddell back in the day when he would fight, like when he fought like Randy Couture, like it takes his mind, like it took Chuck Liddell's like all his mind power to be like, stay with a game plan, let Couture
Yeah,
come to
sure.
you and then throw the shot because it's hard for a guy like for him to fight on his back foot. He wants to bring the fight to you. And it's interesting to me, like, that aspect of the fight interests me, especially with the cardio and especially, like, it like, a guy like Frankie Edgar or a guy like Israel, like, or Gustafson, right? They're running 2 miles backwards every fight on it feels like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're used to it, but a guy like Duplessis, like, how many times in sparring is he going backwards?
Sure.
Probably never. So, that's gonna be an interesting factor in that.
That's a great point, dude. And honestly, between the two, I could, again, hindsight could make me look foolish. I trust Strickland more to fight more efficiently off his back foot than if
Yes,
Duplessis
yes.
needs to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen it before
Yeah.
with Strickland. Yeah, where he's
No.
gotten really defensive because he's like, I got to figure this out first before I go.
Yeah.
Or like against Abus or against Uriah Hall, even he was on the
Yeah.
back foot a
Sure.
little bit. Yeah. So yeah, dude. But amazing fight.
Totally.
It's like these two a year ago, you would be like, there's no way these two are going to carry a semi average, below average pay per view card and
Yeah.
make it entertaining, and they are.
And dude, and maybe then headline UFC 300 against
Hmm.
Israel Adesanya. That's my gut feeling is telling me
I
what's
think
going on
I
here.
think if Duplessis wins, I think that's what it'll be. But yeah, dude, it's crazy.
Yeah. Um, cool, man. I guess one more angle, just really quick. I think that Duplessis is probably a lot better grappler. I just think
Mhm.
that, like, if he grapples heavily and doesn't get Strickland out of there, I think that's going to really suck into his gas tank, too. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So I think that sub kind of has to come early for him. But I do see a world where he does something maybe not quite as, like, uh dominantly against Whitaker, where he just throws him down like that. But I could see him being active with that, with going for the takedown and trying to get some top time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. Moving along, we got a main event, a co-main event, excuse me, the 135-pound women's bantamweight
The
championship. We
people's
got,
main event.
yeah, by people, yeah, I'm not even gonna say anything.
Person.
Yeah, a person or two.
Yes.
We got Raquel Pennington taking on Myra Bueno Silva. Um, you know, I it's
What
hard
belt
to
is this
like
for?
be excited about this fight, right? It feels like neither really is a super deserving champion. I think that at the price that it's at right now, like, I mean, I think Myra Buena Silva is going to win this fight, but I can't sit here and confidently say that, like, as a big favorite, I trust her over 5 rounds against a girl like Pennington, who's just like has fought some of the best of the best. Yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know about this one. I'm not super interested in betting it at all. I think Silva is probably just in a little bit, more of her physical prime. I think
Yep.
that she could I think she could probably finish Pennington. At the same time, Pennington is very tough. You know what I mean? So maybe this is just the end of her career where it's not so tough to finish her. That's kind of the angle I'm leaning into, but I don't have like a confident read either way on this one.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'll say is Pennington is someone who I heard about not like right when I started really following the sport, but maybe a little bit after. And she is known to be, she's like the Alexander Gustafson of the women's divisions, where it's like people talk about Gustafson in the gym. Like this dude will compete with the best kickboxers in the world, the best boxers in the world, the best jujitsu in the world, the best wrestlers in the world, and he'll sit there and compete with every single one of them in their sport,
Hmm.
right? And Raquel Pennington is someone who like there's just gym stories about her, like about her hands, her boxing, especially like mostly I'm talking about her boxing.
Sure.
But then when it comes game time, she freezes up a little bit, and she's even though she's won and she's gotten a lot better at like letting the hands go and stuff, she still kind of grinds out wins. Where I've never seen her put on display like what I've heard through like podcasts or through
Yeah,
whatever
sure. Sure.
random interviews. So I think Bueno Silva is like one of these like you said, physical prime, and she's like has a good fighter's mentality. She wants to bring the fight. I think she understands where she's at. Like you're fighting for the Nunes belt, as I call as I call it. The Nunes belt is,
Yeah.
she probably runs through both of these people. So if you're Bueno Silva, you need to like I think she understands that, and I think she wants to put on a show, and like Strickland's kind of talking shit about the belt. Other guys are talking shit about this being a co-main event. Chris Curtis is like the second fight on the card.
Yeah.
Arnold Allen versus Evolov is the first fight on the card, and then this is the co-main event. I think that there's a good chance that these girls like go on and put a crazy fight on, which
Yeah, I like that.
whether you're interested or uninterested in women's fights, it's in the UFC. It's gonna happen. Wally Zhang versus Joanna, Valentina versus Grasso, that rivalry.
Sure.
Nunes versus Pena. I mean, not as crazy as a rivalry, I guess, but like 1-1, I guess. Like there's a lot of so there's like been a lot of like women's fights that end up being like some of the best fights of the year, and this has the potential to be a dud and like an total egg, but I think it has more potential to be like a great fight.
Yeah.
And I guess if I'm gonna pick, uh, I don't know who I'm pick at all.
Yeah.
I can't even say. Maybe I'm gonna go with Raquel Pennington, but
Sure.
I think that Bueno Silva, it's 50-50 for me. I really
Yeah.
can't say, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I feel if in a way it's a little bit like Dricus versus Sean, whereas you got like Pennington, this proven 5 round, or at least decision kind of fighter, whose gas tank's gonna hold up a little more so than Myra Bueno Silva, who's just kind of like a physically imposing specimen. Most of her fights end inside the distance. Yeah, I do, and I also appreciate them getting a little chippy at the press conference as well. They were going
I
back and
didn't
forth
see
a little
that. I
bit.
didn't see that.
Yeah,
I
they
haven't
were
watched
they
the
were
whole
going
thing.
back and forth a little bit. So I actually like that. That got me a little bit more fired up too. I'm
Yeah.
old school. What can you say? I'm easy to please. Just make me a little interested.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, moving along here, we've got a 170-pound matchup. We got Neil Magny taking on Mike Malott, the hometown kid. Um, James, kick us off on this one, man.
Yeah, dude. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Letterkenny,
Yeah, I
but
have.
you have. Dude,
Yeah.
Mike Malott reminds me of the hockey players in that show so
Sure.
much.
Yeah.
And so if anyone's never watched Letterkenny, go turn that on. It's an amazing show. Um, and it's a funny show with Canadians. But like just like dude, that is a guy who to me represents youthful Canada and is a guy who
Yeah,
I feel
sure.
like this crowd is about to go fucking crazy for. And this is a showcase fight for him in my mind where he should be able to run through Neil Magny. Even if he faces a little adversity, I'd be surprised. Um, I get that Magny has like he has tricks up his sleeve and he has length. And if Malott gets over aggressive with just striking, Magny can like catch him with some shots. But I feel like Malott's athleticism, the times that I've watched him, I'm like, man, this guy's so athletic. He's really fast for his size, being a 170er,
Mhm.
and he seems explosive. And he seems like he's got that explosion, but he's got like that wrestler style cardio with it, where he can
Yeah.
explode for 3 rounds and at the very least go the next 2 rounds, in a 5-round fight. So I don't have too many, I worries about his cardio in this fight either against Neil Magny's cardio. So
Sure.
I think that this is a showcase fight. I think Malott gets the fans going. I think they go crazy right before the women's fight in the main event. And yeah, I think he's we're gonna see how big he is in Canada in this fight. I think he's gonna be pretty big.
Yeah, I think he might get the biggest ovation. Maybe
Mhm,
Sean Strickland might get a bigger one, but I'm
mhm.
expecting Mallets to be fucking quite the scene there in Canada. Yeah, man, I don't have, I'm kind of with you on everything you said. I don't have too much to add. I will say that, Mallet, not super. Yeah, I don't know if he's ever finished like had a fight go to decision.
Yeah,
So that worries me as far as just how his like cardio holds up against a guy like Magny. With that said, I think he should be able to either, find a submission or at least win 2 out of the 3 rounds. Um, I'm looking at the prices. Mallet by submission. I mean, it's like plus 110. I mean, and that's like the most favored way the fight ends, which I sort of get being how like, he's got high level BJJ and Magny kind of susceptible to getting subbed out. But I mean, just for betting standpoint, I kind of like Mallet by decision at plus 500. I think that's an interesting one. Um, because I can definitely see a scenario where, he gives Neil Magny hell for 2 rounds and then kind of gets a little tired when he's not able to find that finish maybe as easily as he has against, the lower level competition. You know what I mean?
right.
So I kind of like this. I might take a stab on the decision prop there for Mallet at plus 500.
Yeah, dude, I think that's a good bet. I think this would be the fight that he goes the distance on.
Yeah, yeah, it's very possible. Cool, man. Moving along, we got Chris Curtis taking on Mark Andre Barrialt. I mean, should be an awesome action-packed fight. I'll kick us off on this one, man. I am super torn on this one. I've had Chris Curtis, his fights has been one of my most profitable betting angles. Like it is the entire time I've been betting MMA. And I've had a good read on a lot of his fights, whether he wins or loses. I've tended to be on the right side. This is a tough one. I don't think he should be like a minus 200 favorite. And I'm tempted to put a bet on Barrial. I just like, the size of Barrial with his volume, with his cardio makes me like think that Curtis like sort of is going to be knockout reliant on a win here just because I think Curtis with a lot of his later wins is against guys who kind of wither down the stretch and don't have like that great cardio. Barry Alt, like, he's going to be coming forward at Curtis, and he's definitely hittable, and Curtis is a great counter puncher. At the same time, Barry Alt's pretty durable, and he's not going to fade away in those later rounds. And if he's not fading away and Curtis isn't finishing him, the volume is for sure, in my opinion, going to be add up on Barry Alt's side, like pretty significantly. And I just think it's going to be one of those things where, maybe Curtis either gets going a little bit too late, and ends up having a good third round or something, but doesn't the striking metrics in the first two round are way too heavily swinging towards the Barry Alt side. Like maybe he outstrikes him 2-1 in those first two rounds, or 3-1 in those first two rounds, and then by the time Curtis starts putting things together, it's like a little bit too late. That's like kind of how my gut feeling tells me this one goes, is Barry Alt by decision. I haven't looked at that prop a whole lot, but I'm kind of just looking at the money line of Barry Alt plus 165. I think I might take a shot at, but
Mhm.
you know, man, Curtis is good, dude, and he hits fucking hard. It's just, I think I've said this before on this podcast. I think he's really more of a 170 pounder and fighting at 185, and Barry Alt's a legit 185er.
Yeah, I see. I'm just not a believer in Barry Alt. Like, I think
Sure.
that he's kind of made his way to this point, and it's like, congrats. But I think this is like his peak, like where, so could be wrong. The other thing is that what I'm more worried about is actually Barry Alt, like, game planning this fight and circling and not coming after Chris Curtis. Because I think that if Barry Alt, the way that he strikes, I don't think I don't think people understand like Chris Curtis's ability to counterpunch. Like, it's super, super high level. But the problem is that he's too reliant on it. So
Yeah.
he lets rounds go by the wayside. I mean, his fight against Jack Hermanson a couple of years ago was just the epitome of like watching a guy who's probably a better fighter and can beat more world champion contenders at any weight class lose a fight because he just relies on seeing shots and he relies too, like, he's not reactive enough.
Yeah.
Um he tries to make reads a little bit too much. But I think if Barry All fights the way that he normally does, which is kind of like pressure, guns blazing, coming forward at you, I think Curtis just times one on him and just plops his ass down. And
Yeah.
I maybe he doesn't go down right away because maybe the size thing is a factor. I could see Curtis dropping Barry All if Barry All fights the way that he does, like 2 or 3 times in this fight
Wow.
before it ends. Yeah. Um, I don't see Chris Curtis losing. I'll say
Cool.
that now, but
Yeah. Hell yeah.
yeah, but I'm like, but like we'll see what happens, after hearing you kind of go with the or like, especially you're a little bit I like maybe you're a little swayed by the odds as well to
Hmm.
like go, okay, well, I think this is like closer to a 50-50, or maybe even give Barry all the edge and he's the underdog. Like, I'm going to take that.
It's
Yeah,
exactly where I'm at. I
right,
think it's a little bit too wide for
right.
Curtis. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, yeah, that's interesting to me just because I feel like this guy's like, even though he's big and whatever, I think his style's like tailor made for Curtis. So I'm more worried about him pulling the Jack Hermanson like game plan and just circling the octagon the whole time, and Curtis not making the adjustment.
Just frustrating the shit out of Curtis.
Yes,
Yeah, for sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dude, Curtis would be a menace in 5 round fights, I
We
feel like.
always we
Yeah,
talk about
he
that
really
every
would.
time. Yeah, he would, dude. He would.
Very Peter Yan-esque in the sense that like he
Yes.
downloads the data a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he has good like leg kicks and body kicks and head kicks too, but he
Especially
just
would
doesn't.
throw him more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he just doesn't throw them. Yeah. They all look
Seriously.
good when he throws them.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. I don't got anything more to add to that one. James, first fight of the main card. We are talking about this. Maybe the second best fight on the card. And could be, a fight night main event or pay-per-view co-main kind of thing. On its own at some point, I feel like. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We got Arnold Allen taking on Mosfar Evlov in a 145-pound matchup. Very, very intriguing fight here, James. Kick us off on this one.
I'm going Arnold Allen.
Love it.
Yeah, I think I when he the last few times that he saw, it's been unfortunate because the Calvin Cater thing happened, but he looked really good in that first round against Calvin Cater. You can't tell much off one round.
Yeah.
Then he fought with Max Holloway. He fought a really good fight, and I still think Max is a really good. Like, I still think he's the second best in the division. I guess Ilias come up, and like there's dudes, but the Max Holloway he fought, I thought is still a really good Max Holloway.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, dude. I think Allen, he was a guy that I was like, there's no way this guy's in the top 5 when I saw like him making his run up. And then I watched him fight a couple times and I'm like, this guy's good. Like
Yeah.
he's a good fighter. He's accurate with his shots. He is like hype. He seems hyper focused when he fights. He has good ground game. Um, so I'm gonna go with him. Evolov, you know, obviously the only thing that I'm worried about in this fight is Evolov pushing him up against the cage, Allen up against the cage, getting him down, holding him down, land a few shots, get back up against the cage he goes. Round's over. Next round, get him down, hold him down. Allen gets back up, lands a few shots on Evolov.
Yeah, sure.
But like one of these, whatever, one of these like kind of boring fights. A little worried about that. Um, but I think Allen has enough ground takedown defense and like offense on the ground to like keep Evolov busy. And then when it's standing, even though I think Evolov's stand up is not bad. Um, I think just Allen has a good solid advantage there.
Yeah, fair enough, dude. It's super interesting fight. I'm leaning towards the Allen side as well, you know. We it's been a long time, it feels like, since we've seen Allen like really face a wrestler like this that's gonna be aggressive, as Mosvar is as far as hunting for the takedown. Um Back in 2017, 2018, Allen fought, Akwan Amirkhani and Mads Burnell, and we saw him like get taken down quite a bit, controlled a bit in those fights. Um, so much of Allen reminds me of Leon Edwards. And
Yes.
like what I when I bring up those fights of Mads Burnell and Amirkhani, it feels like to me it's like, okay, that was 6-ish years ago. We've seen the grappling improvements that Leon made in like a 6-year span, and like they've been phenomenal. And we've seen, it feels like to me like Allen is kind of on that same trajectory where he's just making a lot of really slick improvements to his defensive grappling. And just like, like you said, probably, he's aggressive with some of the submissions, but more so, I think he's just trying to work to keep that fight standing, you know?
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just Evlov, solid grappling and pace. He's super legit. Like you mentioned, his striking is good too. I think that he eats a lot of big shots, and he seems like he has a really solid chin. But he's eating some huge shots, and Allen hits like a truck too, man. So I don't know how many of those big shots he's going to be able to take from Allen. Um, and like I understand Evlov being a favorite, I guess, but yeah, like it's hard to bet against takedowns with and control time and volume, right? Like the guy who has those three advantages, it's kind of hard to go against. But at the same time, like that's like the Usman mold, and that was the Colby mold, sorry. And like, it was the mold up until they fought a guy like Leon Edwards, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it feels like to me, is that Allen is a little bit more of that Leon Edwards mold here. Evlov is more of that Kamaru Colby type mold. And I think that at some point, Allen is a high enough level now to where he kind of negates a lot of the advantages that a guy like Evlov is going to have. Um, Last thing I'll say on it is I feel like the UFC really likes Arnold Allen, compared to, and like sees a lot more maybe like star potential in him, especially him being a UK fighter, than a guy like Mosvar, right? Who isn't really a finisher, who is more like kind of like a not English speaking Russian fighter who doesn't really excite a lot of people that aren't hardcore fans, like
Hmm.
hardcore fans know he's a legit mixed martial artist. But yeah, man, like I just feel like the UFC would rather have Arnold Allen like in that title mix right now than having Mosvar in that title mix. So yeah, give me, I think the improvements from Allen are going to be enough to keep this standing for enough period of time to where he can do some damage. And I think the UFC, he's going to be a lot bigger too in there. I think he's going to look a lot bigger than Mosvar. And I feel like maybe
Mhm.
it's a little bit difficult for Mosvar that like his gas tank doesn't hold up against a guy the size of Allen if he's not having a lot of success with those takedowns.
Yeah, dude, that's so funny you said the Leon Edwards thing. I swear I was gonna say that when I was talking about
Yeah,
it
yeah. It's easy. It's
because
hard not to see it, right?
yeah,
Like,
it is.
yeah.
It's the hyper focus type thing where it's like they're really athletic. That's where that
Yes.
like learning the takedown defense and all that comes in is that I feel like Allen's a really good athlete. So yeah, dude, I'd like to see him like get this dub because he's had kind of like some weird, the Max Holloway fight was a great fight, but lost like, in that like, lost pretty clearly. And then the Calvin Cade, like he's just this is a good fight for him to show he's legit and show he's here to like stay in that top
Yep.
5 and win a title one day, as
Yeah.
his plans would go.
Yeah, because you got to feel like if you can beat a guy with the pace and volume of Mosfar, like you can compete with anybody. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
It's not hard to see you in a championship spot then.
Right.
Yeah, great fight, man. What an underrated fight. It's shot
Yeah.
great way to kick off this main card, which
It
isn't
is.
so hot, but it's still, this is a legit banger of a fight.
Yep.
Um James, that's the main card, man. I don't really have any of these prelims that I want to talk about. I got to do a little bit more tape on some of these still, but
Yeah.
I think Jourdain versus Woodson should be an awesome fight.
Yeah.
We love Jourdain and think that Woodson just kind of got a weird frame and style to deal with. So
Hmm.
it should be interesting. Katana versus Armfield. I think Katana is going to come out and do his thing. He might get a huge reaction in Canada too. Only
Yeah.
only two-time Ultimate Fighter winner fighting in his home country.
Yeah.
Feels like he's going to do his thing and probably just grind Armfield out.
Hmm.
Any you want to talk about?
Um, yeah, there's nothing crazy that like I'm super excited about, I guess, on the prelims. There's some like good fights like Lanise versus Patterson will be interesting just to see how Patterson reacts because I feel like he came in with like some hype and he just fell like a tree.
Yeah,
And then you have these Sirhi City versus
yeah.
Bars. Dude, their tape was pretty interesting. I know they fought before,
Hmm.
but Tavares has like really legit hands, and City looks like a well-rounded fighter who has like good striking. Um, so that's an interesting fight. And then yeah, Jourdain versus Woodson, probably the most Jillian Robertson versus Vienna is not a bad fight either, honestly, for the women's division.
No, I
Um,
love seeing Pollyanna in there.
yeah, yeah. Um, but Jourdain versus Woodson's probably the most intriguing just because I think that Jourdain has a lot of hype right now, and I think he is a really good fighter, but I think there is something about Woodson's style where it's like if he can put it together and not just have like these really bad performances that he sometimes has, and just like I don't know what he has to do. Maybe he's a little too like weak for
Yeah,
the
I
division.
think it's the weight cut just fucks him a
Yeah,
little bit. Yeah.
but really interesting like style, like fast, fluid hands, super long, pops you the whole fight. Throws good teeps, good feints.
Mhm.
It feels like he should be like more successful than he is, but there's got to be something that those fighters, when they're in there against him, that they're feeling that's
Yeah.
making them confident to go forward and like put the pressure on him.
He's just not super physical.
Right.
I think that's like really what it comes down to there.
Yeah,
Um
exactly.
Dude, side note before we end it, I love doing Charles Jourdain tape just because I always go back to like recently, like the Crone Gracie fight.
Mhm.
People hated that fight. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite fights of all time. I had a huge bet on Jourdain, and it was just so funny watching that all unfold.
Oh my God, dude, that was
Yeah.
crazy.
Do you think we'll ever see Crone Gracie in the UFC, like in an MMA fight ever again?
I don't know if we'll ever see him like
In
see him.
general, yeah.
Yeah.
In general, yeah.
He's just an insane guy. I mean, it was just so crazy how there was all these stories about Crone Gracie and how he was training and how everyone thought all these improvements might be happening and stuff, and he came out and he looked worse than he ever has looked.
He looked worse than Nick Diaz where it looked against Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, like it was a disaster.
Yeah.
Um, so no, I do not think that happened.
Cool.
The guy's an amazing jujitsu guy. Like, he is
Sure.
amazing at that. But in UFC, where guys can just get back up and they don't want to engage on the ground and stuff, not for him.
Yeah, no, not for him. He just doesn't want to. Not a single minute of that fight week screamed that he wanted to be there in any way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He probably needed a paycheck, and maybe when he needs another paycheck, he'll come back and do the same thing. And he
yeah,
certainly isn't training his striking or looking to become a better
yeah.
mixed
That
martial artist.
right.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. That's the thing.
yeah,
That's like, okay, whatever. Like, you're not trying to be a better mixed martial artist, so
yeah,
that's whatever.
yeah. Love to see him get knocked out though. Hope he comes back. You know what I mean? Or love to see him snatch someone's neck. That'd be cool
Yeah,
too. Just
yeah, it would be.
anything
Get
but
a,
that last fight, really, unless I'm betting against them, then it's cool.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
James, that's all I got, man.
All right, man.
Everyone, thanks for listening. We'll be back either next week or the week after. We got some good fights coming up.